Okay, are you ready to kind of ditch those gut feelings and dive into some hard data with us today?
Yeah, let's get into it.
We're going deep with Don't Trust Your Gut, a book that really challenges us to look at the evidence when we make decisions.
And not just like, little pieces of evidence, like
Yes.
millions of data points.
Yeah, we're talking big data.
Yeah.
All about what actually works in life and love and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, some of this stuff is pretty mind-blowing.
It really is.
Like, let's start with dating.
Okay.
This book goes into online dating data
Right.
and uncovers some seriously surprising stuff
Yeah.
about what people actually find attractive.
What do we think we know?
Yeah.
What's the reality? Like,
Gosh.
what are we working with here?
Like, for instance, height.
Mm-hmm.
For men,
Yeah.
it's like way more important than you think.
It's a big one.
The data shows that men between 6'3" and 6'4" get a whopping 30% more messages
Huge.
than men under 6 feet.
No.
That's wild.
Yeah, you're talking about like a shorter guy would need to make significantly more money to be on the same level.
To even out the playing
To
field.
even out the playing field. Yeah, it's crazy.
100%.
It's huge.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
So height matters, but what about money?
Okay.
Is it really all about the Benjamins?
Well, it is a factor,
Okay.
but it might not be as dominant as you think.
Interesting.
What's fascinating is that sometimes a man's occupation can actually be more attractive than his salary.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What kind of occupations are we talking about here?
Well, think firefighters, for instance.
Okay.
The research shows that certain jobs, like ones that are associated with bravery and community service, they're seen as inherently more attractive,
Regardless of how much they make.
regardless of income.
So like a firefighter earning a modest salary might actually be viewed as more desirable than someone making bank in like finance or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of,
Makes you think,
yeah, it's like, it's not just about flashing the cash.
not just about the money.
It's about what your job says about you as a person.
What kind of person are you?
Right.
It speaks to those deeper qualities,
Yeah.
like courage and a sense of purpose.
I like that.
Right.
So, okay, we've talked about
Yeah.
what gets people's attention in the dating world.
The initial spark.
Right.
What gets you swiping?
But what about those who have already found their match?
Okay.
Does the data offer any insights into long-term relationship success?
It does.
Lay it on me.
The book highlights some groundbreaking research
Okay.
by Samantha Joel,
Right.
and she compiled this massive data set,
Yeah.
the largest ever collected on couples.
Wow.
And what did she find?
What'd she find?
A lot of the things that people stress over in the dating game,
Like what?
shared hobbies,
Okay.
similar backgrounds, that stuff, those things don't actually correlate that strongly with long-term relationship happiness.
Oh, really?
So all that agonizing over whether you have enough in common
Right.
might be for nothing.
Wow. So what does actually matter then?
Well, according to her research,
Yeah.
the real predictors of relationship happiness are things like life satisfaction,
Okay.
a growth mindset,
Interesting.
conscientiousness,
Yeah.
and a secure attachment style.
So it's about like the deeper stuff.
It's the internal qualities.
The personality,
Yeah.
emotional well-being.
Your own emotional well-being and that of your partner.
This is making me rethink my whole approach to relationships.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught up in like the superficial stuff when it's like the deeper internal qualities are what really matter.
I think we're conditioned to think that way in a lot of areas of life, not just romance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of life-altering decisions,
Okay.
let's move on to a topic that's near and dear to many of our listeners,
Right.
parenting.
Big one.
We all want to raise happy, successful kids,
Of course.
but it feels like every choice
Every little choice.
comes with a mountain of pressure.
So much pressure.
Does the data offer any guidance?
It does.
Uh-huh.
And prepare for a bit of a paradox.
Hmm.
Research using adopted siblings,
Okay.
which helps isolate the impact of parenting from genetics,
Right.
has revealed that surprisingly, the overall influence of most parenting decisions is smaller than we tend to think.
Yeah.
However,
Right.
there is one massive exception:
What's that?
the neighborhood you choose to raise your kids in.
So are you saying that my obsession with finding the perfect preschool is misplaced?
Maybe?
Spill the tea. What's the deal with neighborhoods?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The data shows that the neighborhood you raise your kids in can have a huge impact on their future income,
Wow.
possibly even more than all those other parenting choices combined.
That's huge.
It is.
So what makes a neighborhood good in this context? Is it all about like fancy houses and manicured lawns?
Not necessarily. Researchers have found that the key factors are things like strong social mobility,
Uh-huh.
access to quality education,
Right.
low poverty rates,
Makes sense.
and a supportive community
Right.
with a high percentage of two-parent families.
So it's about providing an environment
Yes.
where kids feel safe,
Safe,
supported, and inspired to thrive.
inspired to thrive, exactly.
And while not everyone has the luxury of picking up and moving,
Right.
we can apply this knowledge
Yes.
by actively seeking out community resources
That's a great point.
and nurturing those positive social connections within our existing neighborhoods.
It's about building that strong community wherever you are.
Yeah, I love that.
Right.
Now, I think it's time we switch gears a little bit
Okay, new topic.
and delve into the world of entrepreneurship.
Right?
Lately, it seems like every other news story is about some young entrepreneur striking it rich,
Especially in the tech world.
especially in tech, right?
Yeah, we see those headlines all the time.
But is that really the norm?
Not necessarily.
So does the data back that up?
Well, those stories definitely make headlines,
Right.
but they don't represent the full picture.
Okay.
Yeah, data analysis of millions of founders
Oh, yeah.
has revealed that the average age of successful entrepreneurs is actually 42.
42.
Yeah.
That's a lot older than I would have guessed.
It's not all about youthful energy and risk-taking.
So does this mean I'm not too old to launch my own business?
Not at all.
Okay, good.
In fact, the data suggests that in many cases, the odds of entrepreneurial success actually increase with age,
Even in tech?
even in fast-paced industries like tech.
So it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
It's a marathon.
Experience and wisdom go a long way.
They do.
That's encouraging.
Very encouraging.
So what other myths about entrepreneurship does the data debunk?
Here's another one.
Okay.
Outsider advantage.
Oh, the idea that you need to be like a rebel
Yeah.
who goes against the grain
The maverick.
to succeed.
Yeah, you got to be an outsider. Well, the data actually shows that experience in your field is a much stronger predictor of success.
Which makes sense when you think about it.
It does.
If you're deeply familiar with an industry,
Hmm?
you're more likely to spot opportunities
Yes.
and navigate challenges effectively.
Exactly.
So it's about leveraging your existing knowledge
Yes.
and networks to build a sustainable and successful venture.
It all comes back to experience.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Data really is challenging all sorts of assumptions I had about success.
I know, right?
Speaking of things we all strive for,
Okay.
let's talk about the Holy Grail happiness.
The big H.
What secrets does the data hold
Mm-hmm.
about living a more joyful life?
So get the book explores something called the Mappiness Project,
Interesting.
which literally tracked people's happiness levels during different activities.
Wow.
And you won't believe what topped the charts.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. Lay it on me.
Believe it or not, intimacy and sex came out on top.
Wow.
Yeah. That's not something you hear every day. Maybe we should hear it more often.
What else made the list?
Well, right behind that
Okay.
were engaging cultural experiences,
Okay.
like going to the theater,
Mm.
concerts, or art exhibitions,
Mm-hmm.
spending time in nature,
Right.
exercising, and creative hobbies also ranked high.
So it seems like nurturing our relationships,
Yeah.
engaging our minds,
Yes.
and connecting with nature
connecting with nature.
are key ingredients
Those are the ingredients
to happiness.
to a happy life.
And what's really cool is that most of these activities are relatively accessible
They are.
and affordable.
You don't need to be rich or own a ton of stuff to experience those things.
That's good news.
Yeah.
It seems like genuine happiness is more about how we spend our time
Mm-hmm.
and who we spend it with
It's about the experiences.
rather than what we own.
Exactly.
I like that a lot.
Right. Which brings up an interesting question. What activities consistently make you feel happy, and how can you make more space for those in your life?
That's a great question for all of us to ponder. But on the flip side, are there any activities that we might think bring us joy but actually lead to misery? You know, those sneaky happiness traps.
Oh, there are, definitely. And the book lays out several that are common in modern life. Some of them might surprise. You want to explore those a bit?
Yeah, let's dive into those happiness traps. I'm all ears.
Let's start with one that's pretty pervasive these days. The social media trap, it might seem like scrolling through our feeds keeps us connected and in the loop, but the data suggests otherwise.
So you're saying our social media habits could actually be sabotaging our happiness? How so?
Well, research has shown that excessive social media use can contribute to feelings of loneliness, anxiety, and even depression.
I can see how that happens. It's like we're constantly comparing ourselves to everyone else's highlight reel. which is bound to make us feel inadequate.
Exactly. And it often pulls us away from real life interactions and experiences that actually nurture our well-being.
So logging off and engaging with the world around us is key.
Precisely. Now, here's another one that might surprise you, the sports trap.
Hold on, I thought we were just talking about how exercise and playing sports are good for happiness.
Uh-huh.
How can being a sports fan be a bad thing?
It's not about the physical activity itself, but rather the emotional roller coaster that comes with being deeply invested in a particular team. The data shows that watching sporting events, especially when our favorite team is playing, can actually make us miserable.
Wait, really? But sports are supposed to be fun? What's the downside?
It all boils down to emotional volatility. When our team wins, we feel elated, but when they lose, which let's face it happens a fair amount, we experience disappointment, frustration, sometimes even anger, and those negative emotions can linger longer and outweigh the fleeting moments of joy when our team does come out on top.
So it's the constant ups and downs of fandom that take a
Yeah,
toll.
exactly, and it's particularly pronounced when we identify strongly with our team, almost like we're personally experiencing those wins and losses.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like our self-worth gets tied to our team's performance. But I'm not sure I'm ready to give up cheering for my team just yet. Is there a way to enjoy sports without falling into this misery trap?
The research indicates that watching games where we don't have a strong emotional stake, maybe a sport we're less familiar with, or teams we don't usually follow, can actually be quite enjoyable. We can appreciate the skill and excitement without riding that emotional roller coaster.
So it's about detaching from the outcome, enjoying the game for the sake of the game itself.
Right, and it can open us up to appreciating a wider range of sporting events. Now, we can't talk about happiness traps without mentioning one that often sneaks up on us. The booze trap, alcohol, is frequently associated with socializing and having a good time, but does the data support that?
All right, let's unpack this one. I know I've certainly had my fair share of fun nights out, fueled by adult beverages. But is there more to the story?
It's definitely more nuanced than it seems. While alcohol can enhance certain experiences, it can also backfire in a big way.
So when does alcohol actually boost our happiness?
Interestingly enough, research suggests that alcohol has the biggest positive impact on our mood when we're doing something we don't enjoy, think being stuck in traffic or waiting in a long line.
Really, so a drink might actually make those annoying situations more bearable.
Exactly. It seems to help us cope with boredom, stress, or discomfort. But here's the catch. We tend to consume the most alcohol when we're already doing things that are inherently enjoyable, like hanging out with friends or going to a concert.
So we're basically using alcohol to amplify experiences that are already pleasurable.
Precisely. And the data suggests that in those situations, the mood boost from alcohol is actually the smallest. It's like we're overdoing it when we don't really need to.
This is making me rethink my drinking habits.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be saving those drinks for the times when we really need a pick-me-up rather than using them to simply enhance already fun experiences.
It's all about being mindful and strategic with our alcohol consumption.
Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the power of nature. We all know that spending time outdoors is good for us, but what does the data say about its connection to happiness?
The Mappiness Project, which we discussed earlier, found a very strong link between being in nature and feeling happier people consistently report higher levels of happiness when they're outdoors, whether they're walking, gardening, or just taking in the scenery.
So it's more than just the fresh air and exercise. There's something about being in a natural environment that boosts our mood.
That's what the data suggests. There's something about the beauty and tranquility of nature that evokes feelings of peace, awe, and contentment.
I know I always feel more relaxed and grounded after spending time in nature.
Exactly. It highlights how important it is to prioritize those experiences, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
All right, last but not least, before we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to touch on a point that really intrigued me, the power of quantity when it comes to achieving success, particularly in creative fields.
This is a concept that often goes against what we've been taught. We tend to think quality trumps quantity, but the data actually tells a different story.
Okay, I'm all ears. How does producing more lead to greater success?
The book argues that by creating a large volume of work, we increase our chances of hitting on something truly exceptional. It's like casting a wider net. The more you put out there, the more likely you are to catch something remarkable.
So it's about embracing experimentation and not being afraid to put our work out there, even if it means creating some duds along the way.
Exactly. The book uses examples of prolific artists like Picasso and Shakespeare who produced a massive amount of work over their lifetimes. Not all of it was considered their best, but it was through that continuous creation and exploration that they achieved their masterpieces.
So it's not about striving for perfection on every attempt, but rather embracing the process, iterating, and allowing ourselves to improve over time.
Precisely. And this concept applies beyond just the arts, whether we're launching a business, learning a new skill, or simply trying new things. Embracing quantity can increase our odds of success and fulfillment.
It's such a liberating concept. It takes the pressure off needing to nail it every single time. It's
Yeah.
more about showing up consistently and putting in the work, knowing that breakthroughs will happen eventually.
Right. It encourages a growth mindset where we view setbacks not as failures, but as opportunities to learn and grow. This
Mhm.
whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. It's amazing how data can reveal these hidden patterns and challenge our assumptions about so many things.
It really is, and it empowers us to make more informed decisions in all areas of our lives.
Now, before we wrap up, I'm curious, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
Well, for me, I think the biggest takeaway is that data can be such a powerful tool
Hmm.
for making smarter choices,
It can.
like by understanding the patterns revealed by big data.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
can kind of challenge those gut feelings,
absolutely.
spot opportunities that we might missed,
Yeah.
and just ultimately increase our chances of finding success
Totally.
and happiness in life.
It's like having a secret weapon.
Right.
But instead of relying on intuition or guesswork,
Uh-huh.
we're armed with these insights
Yeah.
gleaned from millions of data points.
It's about evidence-based decisions,
Yeah.
not just going with your emotions.
Which can be so misleading sometimes.
Right. And so we shouldn't treat data as like the be-all, end-all,
Of course not.
but it can provide like a valuable framework
It's a framework.
for navigating,
The starting point.
the complexities of life.
Exactly. Data should inform our choices, but not dictate them.
Right.
We still need to use our judgment, consider our individual circumstances.
Absolutely. Now, before we sign off, I have one final thought for our listeners to ponder.
Okay, hit me.
If you could track your own happiness,
Mm-hmm.
what activities would light you up consistently?
Ooh, that's a good one.
And how can you weave those activities into your daily life?
Such a great question.
It's about figuring out what truly brings us joy
Yeah.
and then intentionally, designing our lives to prioritize those experiences.
Prioritize the joy.
And remember, data can be your ally in this journey.
It's a tool.
So by paying attention to what makes us happy,
Mm-hmm.
we can cultivate a life that's rich with meaning
Absolutely.
and fulfillment.
Could not agree more.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
That went by fast.
It always does when you're having fun.
It really does.
Thanks for joining us.
And keep questioning those assumptions.
We'll see you next time.